welcome to Joe's Java Studio. Today we'll be covering how to improve performance when you are fetching associations using Spring Data JPA. So by associations I mean all these many-to-one, one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many relationships. So here in the application we have a simple service that has a bank transfer entity and an account entity, and we have a use case where we are trying to settle the transfer. What we're doing here is we're finding a bank transfer by its ID and then settling it. What's happening here is we're just changing its state to settled. Initially it will be created, but we're changing it to settled. And all other fields we're not modifying. So let's go ahead and just see what happens when you fetch a bank transfer and try to update it. We see a select, we're selecting the bank transfer by ID and then updating the bank transfer. So if you look at the select statement, we're seeing that we're doing a left join with account for receiver and sender fields, but we're not using them, so we don't want to necessarily run the left joins. So what you have to do here is in the relation, you'll have to change the fetch type to lazy. The default is eager, as you can see here, but we're going to change that to lazy. Okay, so now let's see what happens. In the new select statement, we see that left joins are not there anymore, so that's good. But we still see an issue where settling transfer only changes the state field in this entity, but we're still updating everything. So if you have a large number of columns, you might want to annotate that entity with dynamic update. This will keep track of which fields were changed and only update those fields. So let's go ahead and check that out. Now we see that here we're only updating the state and its version. Okay. Now let's look at a different use case. We'll be using the list receiver first name. So what we're doing here is we're finding a list of bank transfer by the sender ID. So if this bank transfer was sent by this sender ID, we're finding all those transactions. And for each of those bank transfers, we're getting the receiver's first name. Okay, so let's change this to list receiver first name and see what happens. Now we see a lot more SQL statements. We're selecting here, this is for finding the bank transfer by sender ID, and each of the transfers we're trying to find the receiver in the account table. This is happening because in the first select statement, remember, receiver account many-to-one, fetch type is lazy, which means we're not fetching the receiver field when we fetch the bank transfer. We're fetching it when we try to access the receiver field, which is what we're trying to do here. So this is called an n+1 problem. For each row that you fetch, you're running another statement on that result. So we don't want to do that. So what you have to do here is you can specify which fields to always fetch in your repository methods. So we'll go to the find by sender ID and we'll annotate it with entity graph and give it a field called attribute paths. So this repository method will always fetch for sender and receiver. Okay. So now let's see what happens. Now we don't see any SQL statements anymore. And we just see one SQL statement, select statement. And all these things that we discussed, entity graph, fetch type, yeah, all these things can be used in different use cases. So make sure to think about which use cases that you're implementing, that you need to implement these features. And that is it. Today we covered how to improve performance in some of the cases for association fetching. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for watching.